So it's that time of year again. Apple drops a new iPhone, calls it the best ever, and the hype machine goes into overdrive. But what's the real story once the dust settles? We've gone deep into all the expert reviews for the new iPhone 17 Pro Max to separate the marketing from reality. We're going to find out what's a genuine game changer and what's, well, just not. All right, let's jump right in. Apple's throwing around some big words for this one, calling it their ultimate iPhone. But now the reviews are out, and you know what? The picture they're painting is, well, it's a bit complicated. So is this phone really a huge leap forward, or is it more of a small step, maybe with a few new tripwires? That's what we're here to figure out. Okay, first things first, let's talk about the most obvious change right out of the box, the design. I mean, Apple went for a total overhaul on the look and feel of the Pro Max this year. But, and this is a big but, reviewers found out pretty quickly that this radical new direction, it comes with some pretty serious trade-offs. So, the biggest deal here is the material. Apple completely ditched the titanium we've gotten used to over the last few years. Instead, they've gone with a solid unibody aluminum chassis. One reviewer called the look sporty and tech-forward, which I kind of get. But pretty much everyone agrees that this one change makes a huge difference when you actually, pick the thing up. And right here is the big dilemma. On the one hand, pretty much every reviewer agrees that those new rounded edges are a massive win for comfort. It just feels so much better in your hand. But, and you knew there was a but coming, that beautiful new aluminum scratches. And I mean easily. I read one review where a guy said his phone got a nick just from tipping over on a table. So the consensus is pretty clear. If you want this thing to stay looking new, a case isn't just a good idea, it's mandatory. Now, what about that display? Well, Apple absolutely cranked the brightness. We're talking an incredible 3,000 nits for outdoor viewing, which is wow. It's fantastic in direct sunlight. But there's a catch. Its biggest rival, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, has a way better anti-reflective coating. So what does that mean in the real world? It means that even though the iPhone screen is technically brighter, the Samsung often has way less glare, which can actually make it easier to see. Kind of ironic, right? All right, let's pop the hood and talk about the engine of this beast, the brand new A19 Pro chip. Apple made some absolutely massive promises about what this thing can do, so let's check the numbers. It's time to see if the benchmarks actually back up the hype. So what exactly are we dealing with here? Well, the A19 Pro is a new 3nm chip. All you really need to know is that means it's packing way more power into a more efficient little package. You've got a 6-core CPU, a 6-core GPU with hardware-accelerated ray tracing, which is going to make your games look amazing. And finally, they've bumped it up to 12 gigs of faster RAM. That's a huge deal for multitasking. Yeah, on paper, this thing is an absolute monster. And when you look at the raw numbers, wow, they're just staggering. I mean, just look at this Geekbench score. The 17 Pro Max is hitting over 10,000. That is a massive jump from last year. We're talking nearly a 20% increase. It completely leaves the 15 Pro Max in the dust. This isn't just a small bump, folks. This is a massive, massive leap in raw CPU power. And it's not just the CPU. Look at the Antutu benchmark. Now, this one tests the whole shebang, CPU, GPU, RAM, the whole user experience. And the story it tells is even more dramatic. The score is just, it's worlds apart from the older phones. So there is absolutely no question. This chip is incredibly, incredibly powerful. But as we all know, raw power on day one is only half the story, right? And this is where things get interesting. This is where we see a bit of a gap between Apple's marketing and what happens in the real world. So Apple promised 40% better performance when the phone is under a lot of stress. But when reviewers actually ran the tests, the results were, let's say, a little more complicated. The CPU stability? Yep, that got a nice boost. But the GPU stability for gaming? It barely moved. So what's the bottom line from the experts? It's definitely an improvement, for sure, but that 40% number? Yeah, not even close. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about what might be the biggest story with this phone, the camera system. For the past few years, that telephoto zoom lens has kind of been the iPhone's Achilles heel. It just hasn't kept up. Well, this year, Apple didn't just make a few small tweaks, no. They went in and gave it a complete and total overhaul. And this quote from Petapixel really just says it all, doesn't it? They called the old 5x telephoto the weakest link in the Apple camera bundle. And they were right. It just couldn't hang with the amazing main and ultra-wide cameras. So going into this year, Apple knew they had a really clear problem they needed to fix. So how did they fix it? Well, this is huge. All three of the rear cameras are now 48 megapixels.
The telephoto is now a 4x optical zoom, but here's the really crucial part. The sensor behind it is 56% larger, and that is a massive deal for getting better, cleaner photos. The front camera got a crazy upgrade too with a new square sensor and something called center stage, which automatically keeps you perfectly framed in video calls. Super cool. But it's really important to remember, the main and ultra-wide cameras, that's the same hardware as last year. Any improvements you see there are all thanks to software.
Now, you've probably seen Apple advertising a new 8x zoom, and it's really important to understand what's actually going on here. This isn't some new magical fourth lens on the back of the phone. What Apple is doing is super clever. They're taking a 12-megapixel crop right from the center of that brand new, huge 48-megapixel sensor on the 4x telephoto lens. It's basically a really, really smart digital zoom.
So the big question is, does it actually work? Is it any good? Well, the folks over at Halide, the guys who make that amazing pro camera app, they really put it through its paces. And their verdict? Look, they'll be the first to tell you it's not tack sharp. But for what it is, a digital crop from a tiny phone sensor, they called the results truly magical and said they were pretty impressed. The takeaway seems to be that it's way, way better than you'd ever expect it to be. Okay, so we've talked specs, we've talked benchmarks, that's all great on paper. But what's it actually like to live with this phone? Day in, day out. Let's dive into the real-world stuff, from the battery life to some of the bugs in the new software.
And let's kick this off with a massive, undisputed win for Apple: battery life. Tom's Guide runs this absolutely brutal test where they just surf the web over cellular until the phone is completely dead. And the iPhone 17 Pro Max, it lasted an insane 17 hours and 54 minutes. To put that into perspective, that's over 3 hours longer than its biggest competitor, the Galaxy S25 Ultra. It crushes last year's iPhone too. This isn't just good, it's the new king of battery life, period. But then we have to talk about charging, and this is still the one area where Apple just seems to be playing catch-up. Now, don't get me wrong, it is faster than last year's model. You can get to about 64% charge in 30 minutes. But the Galaxy S25 Ultra, it's hitting 71% in that same half hour. So yeah, it's an improvement for Apple, but they're still not winning this race.
So what about just using the phone? It's kind of a tale of two halves. The hardware, everyone loves it. Reviewers were pretty much unanimous that the refinements are great. It runs cooler, the speakers sound better, even the new liquid glass look of the software is growing on people. But then there's the software itself, and that's where things fall apart. We're hearing things like notifications being an unmitigated disaster, the new Apple Intelligence features, half-baked. One review even said the whole operating system feels like a buggy beta release. Ouch.
Okay, we've gone through the new design, the crazy fast performance, the overhauled camera, and what it's like to actually live with. So that brings us to the big question, the final verdict. Who is this phone actually for? I mean, who should be spending over $1,000 on this thing?
When you boil it all down, the reviews seem to agree that this isn't really a choice about specs anymore. It's a choice between two completely different philosophies. On one side, you have the iPhone 17 Pro Max. It's all about that seamless integrated experience. You get the best performance on the market, hands down. You get amazing video quality and a camera system that finally feels like it all works together perfectly. The problem? Almost all of its weaknesses are in the software. Then you've got Samsung, which is all about cramming in features and customization. A better screen for bright days, the S Pen, faster charging. But it's wrapped in a design that's starting to feel a little, boring.
And all of this really leads us to one final, really important question. The hardware in this new iPhone, it's brilliant. It's undeniably more powerful, more efficient, and more capable than anything Apple has ever made. But you've got this buggy operating system, AI features that aren't ready for prime time, and basic things like notifications that are still a mess. It really feels like the consensus from all the reviews is crystal clear. Apple's biggest problem isn't making amazing hardware anymore. Their biggest challenge is now making software that's good enough to run on it.